Welcome to the Cherish and Conquer podcast, the show dedicated to celebrating female entrepreneurs' strength, resilience, and innovation. Be inspired by stories of women and what they cherish to help them conquer against all odds. Every other week, you will learn from remarkable women on how they navigate challenges, uphold their values, and create sustainable success. And now, here's your host, Jim Rembach.
Hello and welcome to the Cherish and Conquer podcast. I've got a quick question for you. How well do you listen? You're going to get the opportunity to learn how well you listen, and you're also going to get an opportunity on how to do it better. It's a skill that we all can develop, and I dare to say we all need to do a better job at continuously building that particular skill because we have Heather Younger on the show with us today. Heather, welcome.
Thank you. Thanks for having me, Jim.
So Heather, I've known her for quite a long time when she was doing her customer experience work, but now she's focusing a lot of her attention, which to me is probably also contained within the book that she has published called The Art of Active Listening, How People at Work Feel Heard, Valued, and Understood. Now, before we get into a little bit about even your own entrepreneurial journey, because you shared with me that you started doing the customer experience work as a side gig, and now you're focused in on the work that you're doing now. I'd like you to update me and everyone else. How are you making a difference in the lives of the people with your work today?
As I've been able to really witness, particularly on the longer term engagements I have with organizations, it's just seeing like the long sustainable change I'm seeing around employee buy-in, employees feeling like they're heard and seen, included, things like that. So I feel like my impact is particularly in the times when I'm able to engage with a client longer, is to see that long-term impact of what's happening with employees. Like the employees are really bought in, they're really empowered, they're using their voices are being heard by the leaders in part because of my direction, and that makes me feel good.
Well, as you say that, if you could kind of give us a little bit of insight in how that journey would work. So meaning an organization is experiencing these types of symptoms, and this is kind of how it would work to go through a transformation to where we do have, employees, customers, vendors, partners, everybody feel a little bit more valued and heard and understood.
So this is interesting because my engagements don't always start at the same place. So if we were to put it in like the most perfect kind of line scenario would be an organization comes to me because they know they need to do better in the engagement space. They know they need to kind of include employees or listen to them more. And so, but they don't really know where to start. And so they'll come to me so that I can kind of help establish a process for them to include their employees more, to listen to their employees in a better way, which will then build the empowerment, build the engagement, things like that. It could be that they want to do some listening sessions where they want to have me come in and do some listening sessions to get to the bottom of what their team members want. It could be they just did a survey or they need to do a survey. They haven't done a survey. They're not quite sure. I help them put that together, help them do action planning with that survey information, help them focus on what the most important steps are. So those are kind of some of the ways. I've also gone in where they've brought me in as an executive coach, and then I end up helping them with employee engagement and all the things around that. So I go in so many different ways, and it just depends on what the organization needs and is willing or ready to do in the moment. Sometimes it's small, sometimes it's big.
Well, as you talk, I start also thinking about just the overall market landscape, right? So there's, DEI, diversity, equity, and inclusion. There's employee engagement. There's leadership development. When you start looking at the ecosystem of what the ultimate effect and impact is of what you do, there's so many different choices out there. So, how does an organization say, well, Heather's the fit for us?
I want to say one thing is reputational. I have been at this for a while. And yes, I've written books on it, but I have worked with organizations in the trenches. I think on the leadership space, I've got like more than 25 years of being a leader myself. And so I think like not just being somebody who writes about it or speaks about it, but someone who actually actively has managed people for years and been and that is my strength and strength point. There are a lot of things I don't do well. Leading people is one of them I do well. And so I think that when they know that and they discover that okay, we want her to help with this thing. And on the listening front, it could be I'm referred by someone else, or maybe I present it in a different way in some kind of piece of content or something they hear on my podcast and they go, yep, that's exactly what we need. So I think I've just worked really, really hard to develop a very deep footprint in this space, and I'm just known for it. So that's why they usually seek me out.
Well, if you could go back and kind of give us a little bit of color around the symptoms piece, right? So, because I think as we say, the cobbler's kids has no shoes. When it comes to that whole, self-awareness type of piece, coming to the conclusion that we need to take a particular action oftentimes takes a little bit longer than it should. So what are some of the symptoms that people would be experiencing within, even if they're a solopreneur, quite frankly, what are some of the things that would actually be popping up to tell them, you know what, this is something that I need to address and build the skill on?
Yeah. I mean, I think on the employee engagement side, so thinking of the consulting side and what you're going to do for organizations, because I'm more B2B than I am B2C. I have a B2C element when it comes to individual leaders, but most of it is going to be leaders that are inside of organizations as part of a larger thing I'm working on. And I would say in that space, it would be employees. Well, I think the very first thing is it'd be kind of like they'd see either breakdowns in teams, and so it'd be conflict or like lack of communication or something going on there, or it'd be surveys where they're seeing certain leaders, like leadership teams, markets, divisions, departments, where their scores are like much lower, and they're looking at the feedback and they're seeing things like unfairness, inequality, like things that are happening, like this person's getting preferential treatment over me. It could be, again, I just don't feel heard, or I don't get a say in this. So those are some of the things that, like, some of the places they might see where it pops up organizationally. It could also be that there's change or a merger or a reorg, and they just need to anticipate, but they don't always. But they might anticipate that there's going to be an issue with communication and bringing people along and getting the change to kind of be sustainable. And that's another place where I'm at, because again, it's, if you want to have the buy-in, you want to bring them along, they got to feel included, and they don't feel included if you don't hear their voices. And now on the individual side for leaders, again, they could get feedback from some kind of survey where they are the one who's pinpointed is like a division or a department who's not doing well, or they may have gotten something just directly from team members. It could be I always say there's usually like a pain or a desire to just take it to the next level. Like, I'm doing pretty well, but I want to do much better. So it's not like in most cases, like, for example, most clients that come to me are not awful. Like, it's not like, they're so bad they need to be like fixing. I haven't had many of those. Most of them have been like organizations or leaders who are already on a pretty good path, and they just need to go, and they want to go take it that step further to be like on top workplace boards, or to be just a better leader, a caring leader. Then they'll come to me and they'll seek me out.
I think that's an important distinction, because having a toxic work environment requires a certain level of approach versus what you're talking about, which is that next level of performance. Yep. They always talk about, as far as development and work, that what people don't realize and see is that the top 1% actually work harder at being and staying in the top 1% more so than everyone else trying to obtain the top 1%.
Very true. Yeah, I've done a lot of research on that too, and I agree with you. Yeah.
Myrina.ai draws inspiration from the legendary Amazonian Queen Marina, embodying resilience and strategic brilliance. With our AI-powered SaaS platform, we equip women-led businesses for success in the evolving landscape of AI and business automation. As a partner and community for female-led businesses, Myrina.ai maximizes their potential using AI while providing essential support. Ready to amplify your success using AI with like-minded ladies? Register or learn more at Myrina.ai. And now, back to our interview.
So if we're sitting here and saying, I want to be a top 1%er, how does that apply to, the art of active listening in the 5-step framework?
Yeah. I mean, I'm biased. I do believe that listening, everything starts and stops there. Like, if we aren't quite really leaning in to hear another person's truth, we're not going to get their truth, which means they're not going to solve for their problems. We'll never get to the top 1% and stay there because we aren't solving real problems. We're solving fake or assumed problems. When you do the listening that I described in the 5-part framework, you get to the truth. If you do it in the way that I talk about it and how I teach it, you get to the truth. And then you're able to be prescriptive in either how you're selling something, how you're servicing someone, how you're doing your job, how you're building relationships versus in the way that you assume it versus the real way,
So can you walk us through the framework?
Yeah, let's go through that now. So the first step is to recognize the unsaid. And that really it's really the unspoken cues that are happening inside of our environment. And most of us are running around with our head chopped off, too busy to actually notice it. So, and if we don't do that, now there's blind spots in our leadership or in our relationship because we aren't really picking up what they're putting out, not fully. And so again, now we're going in to meet them. We think we're meeting them where they're at, but we're meeting them partially where they're at because we didn't recognize what they weren't saying to us. And what's embedded in that is a underlying lack of trust, where truth telling, speaking up is not encouraged. So we want to recognize the unsaid so we can get past the blind spots. We can get to the point where we actually can do the next step, which is seeking to understand. And seeking to understand is kind of what we think of as listening. It's kind of, I want to repeat back what you say. I want to shake my head. I want to lean in, I call them the signs of listening. There's physical signs of listening. But we aren't seeking right now in a fertile way. We're doing a lot of parroting of people versus paraphrasing. We aren't looking at their emotional state when they're telling us things they're telling us. We aren't really digging deep with empathy, asking the right questions. There's just a lot of things I think we're failing to do. So we think we're great listeners. We think we're great seekers, but not necessarily. We're doing kind of textbook stuff, but we're not really meeting the needs of the other person. We aren't seeking for their truth. We're seeking for our truth. So we go from seeking to decoding, and that basically is the step where we take what we learn in the first couple steps and we process it. We think about it. We maybe go to our teams with it. We go to our manager with it. We research it, and then we decide what's the best next step. What are we going to do now to meet this person's need? But before that, it's too soon. So again, in that case, we got to pause some more. So listening right now is just done way too quickly. And we're like check the box people. It's like check, done, move them off my plate, done. And so in this way, I'm saying, nope, I need you to slow this down. I need you to really understand. I need you to really soak it in and evaluate why you're listening. And if you are doing that where the listening is focused on your outcomes and your needs, you're just never going to get to the truth. And the truth, when they say the truth will set you free, it really does. Because again, if your outcomes are, I want to have better, less turnover, I want to have more customer satisfaction, I want to have more sales, you get that when you really, truly lean into listen, right? After decoding is action. And that kind of is intuitive, but I think a lot of people don't know, when should I act? Should I act? And I always say it's about doing the right kind of action and the right amount of action, and also asking permission to act. Because I don't know about you, but I have sometimes acted too quickly and I've made things worse. And so you want to make sure that you kind of right size the action and figure out what it is by kind of asking the person for permission and getting an idea of what they expect from you before you take action. But action is where the connection between their voices they used and your action you take is really where they start to feel heard. They're like, okay, now there's evidence. I actually am seeing them doing something, and most people never do anything after they hear someone, they listen and they seek, right? And so in this case, action is embedded in listening. It doesn't mean you have to act on everything, but you need to take some sort of action. Sometimes action is just being a shoulder for somebody. It's just literally being present, and that's the only action they want from you. But you need to double check that. And then the last step is closing the loop. And that is going back to the customer or to the employee or to whomever and letting them know what you did about what it is they asked you to do, feedback or request a complaint, whatever it is. You go back to them and you say, oh my gosh, that was such good feedback. And I've taken some time to really process this, and I've talked to this person, and I've done some research, and I've dug around a little bit, and you were right. And here's what we're going to do about it. Or you were right. Unfortunately, we're not going to be able to do quite what you wanted, but maybe we might do this. Is this compromise good? Or you know what? Sorry, but we looked and it's not, I always say from the customer experience perspective, and I think like everybody's a customer. So let me just be clear on that. I think everybody's a customer. I'm here to serve everybody. That I never want to go back to the table empty-handed, period. So even if I can't do a thing, I need to present it in a way that feels very partnering and collaborative and compromising, like I'm doing a compromise. So even if I go back to them and I can't, I've looked at it and they were wrong. Obviously, I'm not going to say you were wrong, but I think it's important to say, I've done all the research. I really take your feedback to heart. I was looking at it and I didn't find any evidence of this particular thing, but maybe there could have been other evidence of something else. But I can see how you landed on that, because I did see something over here. So let's talk about that. So I've kind of moved them off the space of where they're at, but made them realize I did pay attention. And when I did it, I saw this thing. And so then now let's solve for that and let's close the loop on that. Let's try to see if we can come to a solution on that, and then keep doing it. So it's like not a one-time occurrence. It might be that you go back and you do the thing you said you're going to do. You come back a few months later. How did that feel? Was that good? Did you think does that work for you? And then you go back again, like a tennis match. So listening now becomes not this passive thing or even a one-sided thing. It becomes a partnering, like a tennis match thing, where it's back and forth and back and forth. And in the end, the people finally feel seen and heard.
So as you're talking, I start thinking about what a lot of organizations refer to as either a weakness or a shortage in their leadership pipeline. Now, you talked about having and working with organizations that are already higher performers, and so you have a scenario to where you don't have a lot of the problems like this story right here that I'm getting ready to share with you. So I was an outside provider of a service for a global organization, and I was invited to an internal meeting that had 75 reports to an executive VP. And after everything was discussed, he posed the question if anybody had any feedback or had any ideas or thoughts about anything that was covered. And 75 plus people in this room, and nobody said anything whatsoever. And then part of his feedback to me, because I was external, right? He was like, I ask people for, feedback and help all the time. He goes, but they never give me any. And my little voice was saying, yeah, because you're a jerk. Anytime somebody presents a new idea to you, you cut their legs off. And so after with time, nobody wants to give you any new ideas because they're going to get beaten up right in front of everybody.
Yep.
Now, eventually that EVP was given a career redirection a couple of years later, but it's those types of things that he wasn't also probably willing to change. So a good coach is only as good as good as their coachee is. Now, if we're talking about that leadership development pipeline, getting people who are more aware and having more and more of those people within your organization, I would dare to think that if I'm a high performer, I'm actually generating more leaders, and my pipeline is overfilled, and now my people have opportunities, to go other places because of what they've learned here. Versus, again, the scarcity mindset is, well, if I teach everybody how to do better at this, then they're going to leave. I think it's a positive thing if you're a developing organization, because you're going to get more referrals and more business back to you. What have you found?
Yeah, it's interesting. I would say that, you should definitely be more flexible and open with the idea that you're there to develop people. Like you can't even really be a leader unless your focus is leading and developing other people, other leaders. So I'm with you that it makes no sense to me that you're going to be greedy with what you teach them because you're afraid they're going to leave. I mean, I feel like as leader builders, it's irrespective. You want them to stay. So retention is a big issue. You want them to stay either in your team or your organization. But your real end goal should be, how am I developing another human to move on to be their best, to be like operating at their highest good. And so that you do whatever you got to do in order to get there. You don't worry about what that's going to be. Like it's serving people in the moment. And going back to that manager, the leader, he wasn't even leader, the manager who was in that group. Yeah, there was no psychological safety there. There's just no safety for anybody to speak up. And that's just that's not going to be an environment that's going to foster. I have that when I'm working with organizations and I say they're mostly there, they're on a good, there's still those kind of pockets inside those organizations that are doing quite well still, but they have that's like non-psychologically safe little pockets throughout. And that's why I come in and it's helping to uncover that through the data and helping to move that forward and see if there's a way to train up a group of those people, right, to try to help them be aware. Because you hit the nail on the head that as we think about any kind of personal or organizational change, you have to have the self-awareness. You have to have that desire to change. And then you have to have the stamina to see the change through, like that willingness to go day by day, ongoing, to do the things that are required to see it. That's why I love long-term engagements, because I can see the impact over time versus the one and dones where you're like, did anything ever come from that? So yeah, I think you hit the nail on the head in lots of different ways. It doesn't surprise me, Jim.
Unfortunately, you're talking about the average and the norm. I think it falls into that story.
Yes.
It does. But again, I do have hope. There is opportunities for people to improve, and you're helping to bring that to fruition, to action. So thank you for that. Mm-hmm. Okay. So I'd love to hear, because we talked about this a little bit. You kind of started a side gig, but you've been, an entrepreneur and owning your own business for quite a while now. What inspired you to start your own business, and how does it align with the concept of cherish and conquer?
Oh, wow. Oh, I love that. Well, the reason why I started my own business is because I was sick of working for jerks. Okay. So the reason why I focus on helping leaders become caring leaders, and, with listening, belonging, all the things I talk about, is because I had my fair share of those who, they weren't all awful, but they just didn't quite get it. And I felt like I needed to be the window into the world of those who had the power to change experiences for employees, and help them see the error of their ways and help them then change it. Of course, that couldn't be possible if they didn't have awareness and desire, like we talked about, and that willingness to stay with it. I would say this cherish and conquer idea, I think for me, holding on to the knowledge or the memory of the jerks and the experience that they created, so that I'm almost like cherishing that memory that helps me go forward. And I'm also cherishing the very few leaders who did the opposite of that. The memories of them continues to say, how can I continue to show other people to do that, to produce that positive memory? And I think the conquering part is just done by like every day showing up with that mission of like making sure people are seen and heard and valued, to making sure that people feel like they are cared for. And so I'm kind of breaking through barriers all the time where people either think they can't do it, think that they don't have the choice. And I'm really opening up the blind a little bit to say, but you do, and here's how, and here's why it matters. And so that's why I think that I'm able to cherish and conquer that way in the work I do.
At the core of Myrina.ai is customization and the innovative AI you process, which uses AI to infuse your personality, style, and vision into cloning you and growing your business. Are you ready to amplify your success using AI with a community of fellow female entrepreneurs? Go to Myrina.ai today. And now, back to the interview.
I appreciate you sharing that. Okay, can you share a story when embracing feminine qualities or strengths helped you to overcome a challenge in your business?
I feel like that's what I do all the time. But as I think this through, so one of the things that I feel like I lean real hard into is empathy and compassion. Those are kind of the two things I do, and which people may think they're kind of feminine traits, right? And there are times, there's one particular time I can think of a client of mine. So this was a female client. So it was an organization that was, the head of HR was female. And I could tell that she was just running into a wall over and over again, and by this majority white male leadership team who wasn't like really valuing her role in HR. And I could sense just her, frustration. I could sense how, where she was at. And I wasn't quite deep into our relationship so we were only just kind of topical, but I hadn't gone like long term and really deep. And I just kind of said, I just was there in the moment to uplift her and to give her like a business case and, you know, how should you do this, and giving her ideas and strategies for being able to sell this concept to the leadership team. But it was because I could sense her like frustration and even some insecurity. And so I just kind of came to her side. I became a little bit of a superhero to her in the moment, but it was really so that she could be a superhero in the workplace for her people. And then her confidence grew, and she saw me as a catalyst in a big way for that. And so then we were able to partner more and more. And that was a client I was with for about 5 years because she saw the value of having me as an advisor there.
Yeah. And for me, even a lot of the things that you had talked about in regards to value, worth, heard, I mean, you were providing all of those things to her.
Yes.
So I would dare to say the framework that you're talking about, if you think about the evolution of that framework, how has that developed over time to be what it is today, knowing that I'm knowing the times where we have, had the opportunity to meet and talk, I know you're never going to stop refining it.
Yeah, exactly. And it's interesting because I have multiple frameworks. That's my listening framework. I have my whole overarching caring leadership framework. And I would say that it does evolve because I'm in the trenches. So it doesn't evolve because I write a book. It evolves because I'm actually I'm either speaking with audiences and I talk to them and I hear what they say and I hear their feedback over time and I evolve it. Or have long-term engagements with clients and then I see things, how they evolve, or I'm reading through the 30,000 or so employee engagement survey comments, or I'm in a facilitated group of employees. It's all about being in the trenches with people. That's why and how I evolve it. You're right to pinpoint, again, doesn't surprise me again. You're right to pinpoint that I believe in congruence. And so that I write and speak and train about the things that I actually exhibit and do. It doesn't mean I'm perfect at those things, but it does mean that I work really hard at them. I lean super hard into them. And so I can then, with a very straight face, lay my head on the pillow at night and know that I'm teaching and speaking and writing about things that I actually do. So congruence is extremely, extremely important to me. I speak on that too. I talk about that because it is super important. You can't just talk about it. You got to be the thing. So, thinking about how I continue to evolve it. When I started, this thing didn't come into play. I'm trying to think of when I actually created it, but I want to say it may have been when I was working on the speech on listening. And I had to really think strategically through my early times in customer experience, which the majority of my career in the customer experience side, working in, mid-level manager roles, but also maybe in many cases, being a part of being a producer as well. So, or being account management of a very large company while I was also managing a team of account managers, that kind of thing. And so I had to start to think about what were the steps that I took during the times where I was really successful with clients, on the customer experience side. And then I started to move over into the employee experience side and leader and all that. And I just kept to see what were the steps I kept taking where relationships were saved, where sales were saved, where relationships were intact, but those things were flourishing. What were the steps that I was taking to kind of save those things, right? And that's where the cycle of active listening came up. So I decided, I copyrighted that 5-step framework, trademarked the name of psychoactive listening. I did all of that because I was like, this is my years of experience, the stuff that's in my head, but also just the steps I have actually walked and taken. And then now I can go teach other people this and then other people can teach it too. So I don't think this 5-step framework will evolve. I'll continue to have more frameworks that will, that will enter into the picture based upon real life steps taken kind of thing. You know what I mean? It's not just some thought up weird stuff. It's how does this actually play out? And if it doesn't feel real to me, or it feels too canned, or it feels contrived or something, I'm just going to remove it. It's just not worth it to me to not give somebody something that actually works.
Well, your hand was feet on the street, your practical application, like you were talking about, even when we first started chatting, is a key differentiator for you. And you continue to, use that iterative process of development so that it's not, getting to the point where it's just theoretical in nature.
Yeah.
It's like, hey, here's proof.
Yeah.
Like you talked about referring to a research study, right? I mean, so it has to be fact-based for you in order for you to have the conviction. And I think that's very admirable, which leads me to this question. How do you ensure that your business practices align with your core values and ethics?
Well, I mean, part of it is a gut check. There's some definitely gut check going on. Like I am absolutely a highly intuitive, like empathetic feeling, sensing a type of person. It's just who I am. So while I say I go from data, that there's data to me is also, it's quantitative. So like numbers and it's qualitative, relational. So I get it from feedback from others. So like one of the things I do, for example, as a speaker or a trainer is I have a kind of a survey that's done right at the end. And I look at the data and I look at the numbers and I look at what they say. And that then, which is again, goes back to what I did in my career and still do of looking at data and looking at surveys, right? So I look at it and I'm like, I would be hypocritical if I was a person who said, I talk about listening and I really believe feedback's important. We should be hearing this, we should do that. And then I don't do it. So I look at the feedback and I go, okay, they're right. I could do this part. Like I don't just change everything immediately. I need to process it. This is the decoding part, right? Maybe what they're saying was only just like one time and I don't need to change anything. But if I see it a few different times, or if I'm like, oh man, that would be much more impactful, then I'll change that thing. But other than that, there's no reason for me to take it in, but I have to decode that first. So that's how I do it. That's how I kind of sniff test my own development, my own journey. When I need to change things, how do I need to be? And am I being who I say I am? Am I being congruent? I look at the data, the quantitative and qualitative.
So I think your interpretive skills are probably top of 1% when you start talking about interpreting data because of all of the things that you have learned. You talked about quantitative and qualitative data, and unfortunately, most of the time, talking about that checklist box situation, people capture the quantitative, but don't get the qualitative. And then so they start drawing some conclusions that may lead them going to a wrong direction or making a change, like you said, that shouldn't have been made. So that education process of quantitative and qualitative, I'm sure, is embedded in what you were talking about in these different frameworks. And then overlaying the emotional intelligence factors in order to have impact from it. So it's the way that you've merged these things two together. I mean, it makes sense to me. But then, like you said, I have to make sure that I'm doing it as well. But can you share a time, an example of a time when staying true to your principles led to a significant achievement or breakthrough in your business?
I'd say recently, in the last 6 months, I had a couple people on one side of my team, on the speaking side, that kind of was like, I don't know if we, carrying leadership is the thing that like is like sticking, or like, I don't know if carrying leadership is like selling, like that kind of concept. And because I believe so strongly in it, and it is because I embody it. Like I am the thing I talk about. And I don't, again, when I say this is not to be like egoistic or anything. It's not. This is literally like, this is who I am and who I strive to be every single day. Why would I not teach others who struggle on this or who want to do better at this? Why would I not continue to write on this, to provide different guidance for people who just like maybe don't get this? Or like you were saying, like there's a quickness about me, a quickness the way I think, and the quickness the way I can connect dots that maybe other people can't do. I know this about me. There's things I don't do well. I'm very clear on those things. I hire for that. I get help with that, right? But in this space, it's a turning point for me to say where I do take feedback, where I can, in the past when I was much younger, I'd be like much more impressionable, or I may be wanting to change faster off the dime, committing to leaning into just like who I want to die to be. Like I will just die being this person. And that's the thing I talk about, this thing I train about, this thing I will always, that's what I stay true to. So for me, that was a big turning point. That was definitely another place I feel like I conquered. It was like, nope, I'm not actually going to move off the dime. And if that means like, there's less speaking engagements, whatever that means, that's what that's going to have to mean, because I just will die go down in flames with this, is what I mean by that. So
I love your conviction. Okay. Can you share a time, can you share a story of a time when you had to pivot or adapt your business strategy?
Yeah, yeah. I think that I get intelligent, some of it by myself and some of it with a team that's like does not say yes to me. So I put people around me who are like, nope, that's stupid. And so they'll be like, yeah, I think we should do this instead of this. And I'll be like, let me think about that. Yeah, you're probably right that we should do that. So I think, just so you know, when I talk about pivoting, it doesn't always happen intuitively in my gut. I have to surround myself with people who tell me that. So whether it's a business coach or team members around me to say, have you thought about this differently? Or, oh, you're minimizing this and that. But I would say the need to be moving in more a direction that expands outside of me needing to be present. So the business that I'm in is like, as whether I'm doing doing training, whether I'm doing speaking or I'm consulting, it has been sort of centered around me. I am the brand. And no matter what other name I call it, I'm still the brand. So I said, okay, if that's the case and if that's true, and if it's hard to replicate the way in which I do it, how about you do things that are kind of like classes, so master classes, or like I have 3 LinkedIn learning courses. So what can you do to I have a certification program on listening so that if I can amplify it and expand the impact where I'm not creating little me's, because that doesn't make any sense at all. We're all different. But if I could take the content that really is effective and has worked for me in my life and professionally and give it to other people who can then train other people, then the impact expanded. So I had to start thinking outside myself and say, well, maybe I can't find a niche practice of the consultants who can be as quick thinking, like kind of what you alluded to, that whole idea of being like, most people can't do the data, the quantitative, qualitative, can't do the data and emotional intelligence. So if I can't quite find people like that, how can I multiply me or like take more of this? And that's where I've had to really pivot, to be thinking more and more outside of myself. Mastermind, certification programs, online courses, another masterclass, what other things that I can do to just continue to expand and get amplify the message, amplify the need across the globe. And I feel a need to continue to do that. I really do.
How do you maintain a healthy work-life balance as a woman in business, and what strategies have worked well for you?
I know anybody listening to this is probably like, holy moly, does she have a balance? Because gosh, that woman can do a lot of things. That's what most people say. They're like, I'm exhausted just by talking to you with all the things you do. And I'd have to say that if you know me, I lean actually quite heavy into self-care. Probably 4 to 5 days a week, I'm either going on a long walk or I'm in the gym, and that's in the morning. First thing, I start with me. I feel self-care does have a lot to do with being with my kids, not in a workplace, but just kind of like being with them, cuddling on the couch, going to movies, just doing stuff with them. For me, that fills me up. So it is an element of self-care. I've been trying to lean more into professional development. I hired a coach. So like some of those things are like taking care of me, like making sure my mind is right. If I need to go to therapy, I would do that. Like I haven't had to, but like, so anything I need for me, I give me. That has been, I'm going to be honest, more than that the last couple of years. I wasn't so good at that until probably the last couple of years. And I finally got to the point where I was like, you're going to go insane if you don't like do something. You better, what are you doing? And so now I just give myself permission. I don't feel guilty. Nope. I used to feel guilty. I used to go, before I was a speaker and I was doing large account management in the customer experience space, and I would be like managing the large accounts in addition to managing people who are managing large accounts. I'd go around the country and I'd go, let's say, fly into Florida, and I'd fly back home the same day. I'd fly to Baltimore and I'd fly home the same day. And it wasn't for any, like, it wasn't like I had to get to a meeting. It was because I was guilty. I felt guilty that I'd be away from my kids. And now I'm like, one of my kids said to me, now, why do you do that? This has been about, he's bright. He's 17. I would say he's like 13. He said, why are you coming home in between? Like, it's not like we have to have you in between. Like, why? And so he questioned why I was doing all of this, like, because you could see it was kind of burning at both ends. And I was like, that was the biggest gift he gave me, just posing the question and stopping me from thinking that I had to do this. And so I kind of, in quick order in the last couple of years, have stopped that. I'm like, if I need that, I'm going to stay the night. And if I need another day because the location is beautiful and it's beach or something, I'm going to stay the extra day. And I don't feel guilty. Yeah.
Good for you. So if I stop and think about you talking about the whole kids thing, and I think I'm trying to remember the last time we chatted. It might have been when your son was in that 13 age. How has the work that you're doing with others essentially been able to be picked up or transferred, onto your kid?
Oh my gosh. Yeah, I do think this is coming to life. Mostly, I have 4 children, for those who don't know, ages 14 to 21. My 21-year-old is a communications major, rising senior at college, and communications. She started really early on being really good at speaking and really articulate, and the way she holds herself. She's the only girl, so she already kind of mimics mom anyway. I have another kid who I think he's just recently discovering that he's really good at impromptu, off the cuff types of like interviews or presentations, and so he's showing up in that way. And I have another kid who, it's so funny. He went to the youngest one. His name is Mateo. He went with me to a speaking engagement, and he loved traveling. Oh my gosh, he loved it because he was in first class, and just all the things. Well, he went to the speaking engagement, and after the engagement, I was signing books, and he was sitting next to me as I was signing books. And all of a sudden, one of the women said, "Oh, can you sign her book too?" And then one person after another asked for him to sign the book, and he got the bug. He was like, "What? Like maybe being a speaker is a possibility." So it wasn't on his radar until he did that. So yeah, I do think that does have impact, and that they see that things are possible, and they see that mom is doing it, and balancing it. But at the same time, when I say it's time for me to pull back, and then mom is taking a nap, mom is staying an extra day, mom is whatever, they don't even argue. They don't say it because they know all of the other effort that goes in, and they know it's important to take the time.
Oh, that's awesome. Thanks for sharing.
Yep.
Okay, so now it's time for our rapid round. It's our breakthrough blitz. Heather, are you ready to help us break through?
I am ready.
All right. So what's your favorite productivity tool or app?
Slack.
What's your favorite way to unwind after a busy day?
Glass of wine.
If you could have dinner with any female business leader, living or deceased, who would it be?
Oprah. Oprah Winfrey.
What's your favorite quote or mantra that keeps you motivated?
I can't remember all the words, but it's Marianne Williamson's quote about basically not playing small just to make someone else feel good.
And what is one piece of advice that you would give to aspiring female entrepreneurs?
Trust yourself.
Okay, this is my last Breakthrough Blitz question. What's the biggest misconception that people have about being a female entrepreneur, and how do you address it in your own experience?
I think they think that we are too soft and that the softness won't contribute to success. And I 100% disagree. I think that we need to lean into the feminine nature of who we are. We need to lean into that softness if you have it. Not all women are that way. That's the other thing. Not all women are kind of like I am, not all. And so stop stereotyping, stop assuming. But if we are, lean into it. Stop trying to be something you're not.
Heather, I've had fun with you today. How do listeners and watchers get in touch with you?
I'd say the best place to find me is LinkedIn. So you just go look Heather Younger and I'm right there. And you'll find like all the things will be right there on that platform.
Heather Younger, thank you for sharing your knowledge and wisdom, and we wish you the very best.
Thank you, Jim. Appreciate you.
Thanks for tuning into the Cherish and Conquer podcast from Marina. Join our community of trailblazing women at community.marina.ai and get access to exclusive resources, checklists, and guides. If you found value in today's episode, please rate, review, subscribe, and share it across your social platforms. See you soon, and remember, barriers are for breaking.